Warning: this episode contains some strong language. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Tales from the Trunk, reading the stories that didn't make it. I'm Hilary B. Bisnietz. Listeners, I'm so excited to welcome back the author of Foxhunt and the forthcoming Wolfpack, Rem Wigmore. Well, Rem, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. We joked about the first time you were on the show, we joked about, oh yeah, we're definitely going to have you back on, and sure enough, here you are.
Like a bad penny.
Do they? My recollection was you don't even have those anymore in New Zealand.
Oh no, we do not have pennies. I have never lived in a time when we've had pennies. What we do have is a lot of American media.
That's fair, and we, unfortunately, for whatever reason, still do have pennies.
Hold on. I'll make that an authentic New Zealand saying. I'll just sort of, translate it into, like a bad 10-cent piece. Like a bad 10-cent coin. There we go.
Perfect. Nailed it.
That's something people say all the time here.
Absolutely do.
Work in our illegal gardens.
Mm-hmm. And then they go off to the shops and have a meat pie.
That we do that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that is authentic New Zealand experience right there.
Oh yeah, you go down to the dairy, you get a butter chicken pie, you get a can of Coke, you just sit about.
Yeah.
You get a little candy mix.
You sat.
A mix.
I have now exhausted everything I know about New Zealand from the 14 days I spent there. Oh, and if Lake Taupō goes, the whole world is done.
Yes. As has happened once before.
Hopefully not in our time, but time is fake, so who even knows?
Who knows?
So you're going to be reading from Considine's Counsel. Is there anything we need to know before we get into it?
Maybe a couple of things. So it's a bit of an in medias res book. It's like, I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it. It's very non-linear.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise it's just like this fantasy book, sword and sorcery, in this medieval fantasy Ireland setting, where the equivalent of the Fae folk are like Paleolithic people
fantastic.
who got frozen in time in the dream wilds. That doesn't come up that much in this excerpt. I just think it's kind of neat. And yeah, it's this scene will be about our titular character tracking down his friend the king, who just abdicated upon his heir being discovered.
Fantastic.
I guess I should read it.
Yeah, probably.
That was an obvious cue right there, and it just...
Listen, I've had a day. This is the first recording that will be happening on July the 11th for my guests. It is not July the 11th where I am sitting. Just wrapping my brain around that is enough.
Welcome to the endless July the 11th, and I'll be beginning it with this reading from Considine's Counsel.
Fantastic.
I'm just trying to get my Word document going good and still have you up in a little window so I can mine your expression for reactions to my story. Oh well, it's fine. Considine rode frantically, fearing he was already too late. Of course he took all the breaks his horse needed, making sure she was watered and not pushed too hard, but he took no such caution with himself. He was 9 days out from the castle now, and for the last 2 there had been only wilderness. He'd seen few living souls, though all nodded to him in deference, so he hadn't succeeded in his goal of dressing plainly. Please be well, Aeon, he murmured. He was nearly sure this place was right, the woods receding into a lazy sea of long grass that rose into the occasional rounded hill. Considine rode faster now he could see further, his loyal mare stretching her legs out with a will. Ahead of him a golden head rose from the grass, turning to him. Considine's heart leapt, and he bent forward in his saddle as he rode. Aeon, there was no mistaking those broad shoulders and the fair hair lying down his back. Considine slowed his horse as he reached him, heart beating giddily fast. Aeon scowled at him and waved his bow. "Damn fool, get down," he called, low and vicious. The joy in Considine's chest clenched into nothing. Obedience was habit by now, and Considine dismounted smoothly, leading his horse to his king, his former king. Aeon looked well, happier than had seemed for years, his fair skin ruddy from sun. Strange to see him in his hunting clothes, even though Considine knew logically that he had worn this life far longer. "I said get down, Con," Aeon hissed, and Considine reassessed. The look in those blue-grey eyes wasn't anger, it was fear. Considine stooped low, crabbing over to where Aeon stood. "Are you well?" he whispered. Aeon frowned, but some of the tension bled from his shoulders now Considine did as he'd bid. "I was fine until you showed up," he said. Considine mustn't have been able to hide his hurt, because Aeon sighed, gesturing with his bow. "Not like that. I'm in the middle of hunting. Do you know how dangerous a wounded hellboar is?" Considine stepped behind Aeon promptly. Aeon grinned at that, and it was mocking, but there was fondness too. "At least you have some sense," Aeon said, and laughed under his breath. He shifted his stance to better cover Considine, and knocked his bow. "The boar's out there bleeding. Sooner or later it'll make a final rush, try to gore me. I'd like to wing it again first, but if you hear it rushing up, give a shout and I'll switch to sword." He wore a normal sword at his belt, plain steel and worn leather, not wake from slumber, the sword of kingship. He'd left that at Cairn when he left. A rustle behind them. Considine spun, throat tight with fear. "Sire," he managed. Aeon stepped past him and fired into the grass. There was an outraged squeal. Considine stumbled back, but Aeon flung out a hand to halt him. "Be still," he said, as he set the bow down and drew the sword sharp and gleaming. He tossed a grin at Considine. "And how many times do I have to tell you to call me my name?" Something rushed from the long grass, dappled brown and screaming. Aeon turned to meet it with his sword raised. They slammed together. Considine covered his eyes reflexively. He forced himself to uncover them, trying to make out detail in the blur of movement. Slavering mouth and tusk, gleaming steel and strong arms tensed. The hellboar was massive, 3 times the size of a wild boar. As well as tusks, it had pebbles of bone over its throat like armor, and a hump of muscle on its back behind its huge head. Beast and king rolled around in the dirt, the boar's screams mixing with Aeon's low grunts. There was a meaty thunk, and Considine flinched, with no way to tell if the noise was from sword or tusk. After what felt like forever, the beast's awful scream cut off into a whimper. Considine let out a shaky sigh and mopped his brow. The boar lay dead or dying, wild eye rolled back, and Aeon stood triumphantly over it. There was a contentment to him. He stood tall and proud, but there, a cut across his arm, it had wounded him. Considine hurried over, reaching out a hand, then dropping it. "I'll see to that," he said firmly, prepared for argument. Aeon looked surprised, but said, "Thank you." He looked over at Considine's mare. "You brought supplies on Bannock, then? Of course." He clicked his tongue, but the mare flicked her ears back, unwilling to approach the bloodshed. Aeon strode over and gave her a fond pat on the nose. Considine's wave of affection nearly knocked him off his feet, just from Aeon remembering his horse's name. Gods, but he was lost. Sometimes the wanting caught him off guard, but by and large he ignored it. He folded his yearning away like festival clothes, only to be looked at on special occasions. Aeon patted Bannock's neck, then jerked a thumb over his shoulder to the carcass. "She can outbring that back." Considine winced at the big bloodied boar, but resigned himself. "Certainly," he said, and started digging for bandages. He'd seen no house around for miles, but Aeon was always full of surprises. "That old hut you told me about?" Aeon smiled with that same contented pride, then sighed as Considine strode over to him, bandages in hand. He stood still at least, as Considine wrapped the wound in clean cloth to stem the bleeding for now. Aon rolled his shoulders, nodded, and lifted the boar. Considine squeaked, "Hold on, I need to arrange our saddlebags." They lashed the beast to Bannock's saddle, and Aon took her rope and led her through the grass. Considine rested a hesitant hand on the dead boar's flank to prevent it from slipping its bonds and help support the weight. Bannock snorted at him, but didn't roll her eyes back or shiver her skin in fear. She was a good horse. Aon stopped and gestured. Even standing right in front of it, Considine had to look twice before he saw the house. Roofed with grass, the hut nearly vanished into the landscape, lying low like a hill. Parts of the walls looked like recent additions, shoring up the roof. Aon sliced the ropes, so the dead boar slipped off Bannock's back and thunked to the ground. She paced back, snorting. Considine patted her nose in apology, but he needed to see to his king before he could clean his horse, unfortunately. The hut was bigger inside than he'd pictured, closer to a cottage, though still humble. A fireplace, 2 solid chairs, a door that led to another room. Considine set his bags down and started boiling water. Aon sighed, but sat and rolled his sleeve up. "Let me wash my hands, and then I'll clean the wound," Considine said, keeping his mind on the task and not the unpleasant sight of Aon's blood. No real need to worry. The gash was deep but clean, and it wouldn't be the first scar on that thick forearm. Aon scowled and shifted in his seat occasionally, but made no complaint as Considine tugged the shreds of his sleeve free from the cut and rinsed it clean. There was a still moment once he'd bandaged the wound and washed his hands, as Aon rolled his shoulders again to test his range of motion. No new blood stained the bandage. Considine drew in a breath to speak. "Right," Aon said abruptly. "Help me gut it." No time for conversations yet, it seemed. Considine brushed down Bannock, and then they gutted the pig together. Nothing in the grisly task gave him pause until the other man sawed off the beast's long tusks. Considine looked at him. Aon glanced aside, oddly self-conscious. "They're useful in magic," he said. "Ain't a trophy." Gods, it must have been years since they'd heard Aon say ain't. And then there was meat to preserve and barrels of salt Aon hauled out from a cellar that looked like he'd dug it himself. Aon saw to the hide, mentioning offhand what food he had inside: turnips, beans, onions. Considine took a few cuts of the meat and set a stew going. Once all the work was done, they ate by the fire in a silence that managed to be comfortable, despite how Considine bit his tongue. He put their dishes to soak and settled back in his chair. This was comfortable, a warm contentment spreading through his body from a day of work outdoors he could now rest from. At times like these, he understood Aon better. He looked at him across the fire. Aon met his glance, then sat up slowly. "No peace for me, then," he said. Considine exhaled. He clenched one fist where Aon couldn't see, digging his nails into his palm. "Only hear me out, and then if you will not listen, you can be free of me." Aon clicked his tongue against his teeth. "It's not your presence I mind, Con, it's whatever you bring with you." He waved a disgruntled hand as Considine tried not to show his relief. "Out with it, then." Considine drew himself up. "The problem is Blackbird." Aon frowned darkly, and he knew he'd chosen the wrong tack. "When I was ruling monarch, you always treated me with the utmost respect," he said. Considine winced at the truth of it, even as he protested. "They are different, sire." "And you're calling me my old title," Aon said, shaking his head, "which I know is old habit, but could look like treason." He waved his hand. "Call them the—" He stopped. Blackbird was not king, not queen. "The ruler?" "We've been calling them the monarch," Considine said, and Aon nodded in thanks. "Gods, yes, that's better." He knuckled at the bridge of his nose. "Good to have words for it. What about the monarch drags you all the way out here?" He frowned. "Have they eaten anyone?" "No," Considine said, appalled. "Was that an option? No, Aon, it's nothing so drastic. It's smaller things, hard to explain." Aon frowned, and he could tell he was losing what little of his attention he held. "They rule, yes, but poorly. They don't act as they should." Aegon's lips thinned. "You speak too broadly. What's the real problem?" Considine nodded, chastened. "It's not anything wrong they have done," he said. "Mostly. His greatest suspicion would have to wait, because Aon wouldn't want to hear it. With a cooler head, he suspected words he'd taken as a threat were merely a jibe, but that was part and parcel of the problem. It's how they act, irreverent, careless, with little respect for their ancient position and the responsibilities it brings. Aon nodded slowly, and for a moment Considine thought he had him. That's all shit I did when I started too, Aon said, and shook his head in dismissal. Aon leaned closer, flaring his nose. Aye, he said, sharply, and you stopped once you saw the harm it did. The monarch doesn't listen. Not to me, and not to anyone as far as I can tell. He didn't like how aggressive his posture felt, and eased back in the seat. He lay his hands flat on his legs and quietened his voice. I was hoping you could get through to them. Your guards are still loyal, and I'll come with you. Whatever happens, you'll be in no danger. Aon looked at him silently across the fire. Please, Considine said, and bit back anything else. Best to leave it at that, however much he longed to tell Aon how tiresome and dragging each day had been in the 6 months since he abdicated. Aon grinned broadly, like he was nothing more than a simple warrior. Hard to do that from out here, eh? He said. How loud do you want me to yell? He stood up with an air of finality before Considine could do more than glare at him. Getting late. You take the bed. Considine opened his mouth, but Aon was tossing hides and furs onto the floor near the fireplace before he could stammer his protests. Still, he tried. Sire, Aon, I couldn't possibly. I wouldn't dream of... Aon interrupted, frowning at him with the firelight glinting off the grey in his eyes. There's few soft things in this life. He thunked his knuckles against the plain, solid floor. Why refuse kindness when you're offered it? He sounded protective, and that was utterly disarming. We haven't spoken of what occurred the day you left the castle, Considine blurted, then winced. Aon stood up slowly. Sometimes Considine forgot what a bulk of a man he was. He didn't meet Considine's eyes. Better not to, isn't it? Aon said. Considine swallowed. He should be used to this pain by now. I see, he said. Yes. He clasped his hands together. What a fool he'd been to ride so rushed out here, and a worse fool for asking. Now Aon would ignore his true errand and think foolish sentiment was why he'd come. He stood decisively. Bannock can carry me well enough at night, at least to the nearest town, he said. Aon frowned in what looked like honest confusion. What? Considine had left his boots by the door. He pulled them on. By the time he had tied the laces, he had mastered himself enough to look Aon in the eye again. I'll take my leave now, he said. Shame and wounded pride burned through his throat, and he closed his mouth tight. It's the middle of the night, Aon exclaimed, and crossed over to him, waving a broad arm. Stay the night, at least. I'll leave now, Considine said again. Aon looked like he wanted to grab him by the collar and shake. It's dark, he said through his teeth, and if you get yourself killed, I'm not coming to save you. Considine drew himself up to his full height. I do not need your protection, he hissed. If you imagine me some helpless fool... Con, I beg you, please stay, Aon said. He looked surprised to hear himself say it. Considine opened his mouth and closed it, and could find no words through his own shock at hearing that much open emotion. After a time he cleared his throat and stooped to unlace his boots. They washed the dishes together in strained silence. Afterwards Aon lit him a lamp. Take the bed, he said again. He flung himself flat on the nest of furs and started peeling off his weapons. Considine took the lamp hastily and scurried to Aon's sleeping chamber. The room was small, but the bed was big and sturdy, smelling of freshly sawn wood. Considine curled up among the furs and fell asleep in Aon's bed with Aon's scent surrounding him. The next morning he dressed in clothes he'd already worn a few days ago, which he would never dream of at court, and ventured out. Aon turned from the porridge pot to give him a broad grin. Sleep well, he said. Considine fought a blush. Is there a river nearby, or stream? He said. Aon dropped the teasing. Good-sized stream, 1/2 mile off. Considine nodded. Good, it smells like you need a wash. Aon laughed. Aon laughed a good laugh from deep in his belly, and Considine caught himself grinning back, bright and warm, as the sunlight streamed in. Only for a moment, though, before he remembered. He dropped his gaze. Aon stirred the porridge and tasted it and looked at him. How long did you plan to be here? Considine crossed his arms over his chest. In the light of day, he knew his mission was more important than his embarrassment. As long as it takes for you to see sense. Aeon frowned, looking truly concerned. Considine took a step back, bracing himself for argument, and Aeon caught his shoulder. Considine, I would never have left Blackbird ruling if I hadn't known you were there to guide them. His faith shone from his eyes and squeezed at Considine's chest. He drew in a ragged breath. I understand nothing of that changeling, and they barely listen to me, he said. But you, sire... Aeon stepped back, eyes going blank. Don't call me that. He banked the fire and hauled up a bag. I'm going to catch us some fish. You can come or you can leave. It's nothing to me. Considine winced to hear him say it, even if Aeon's voice lacked conviction. 10 minutes' walk brought them to what Considine would have more called a river than a stream. The water was clear and deep, running over sand and pebbles. Aeon strode to where a pole was lodged in the bank and strung it with line. Considine came to stand near him. There wasn't a second pole, and he had no idea how to fish anyway. Aeon frowned up at the sky, then rolled his sleeves up to his shoulders. The new scar was pale against the hard muscle of his forearm. Considine glanced aside. Aeon tossed the line. After a while, Aeon said, If you haven't bathed in a fresh stream before, I'd recommend it, like a peace offering, and he seized it. Better than my mother's old tub, Considine ventured. Had he the courage to disrobe in front of his former king? Such things are not for me, I think. Were you going to bathe? Wouldn't you rather I washed downstream? Aeon said casually. That made him laugh, and Aeon grinned with the same self-satisfied contentment he wore when hunting, riding, succeeding at something. Considine had found it obnoxious when he first met him, when he assumed this barbarian who had chance-drawn the Sword of Kings would make a poor replacement to the old regent. He knew better now, and was glad to see him smile. He found something a little more complicated, too, and the fact that making Considine laugh gave Aeon the same look as defeating a foe in battle or slaying a troublesome beast, achieving something important. He looked away from him and picked his way down to the water, well clear of Aeon's fishing line. He could at least wash his face and hands. I can close my eyes, Aeon called down at him lazily. Ah, Considine said. Aeon had never been cruel before, but had never really known him when he was a warrior. Maybe he had never known him. Considine knelt to dip his hands in the water, and a pale, gleaming creature burst from beneath him, seizing him with cold, webbed hands, dragging him down and under. He didn't hear Aeon's shout of concern as the water closed over his head.
Whew.
You can see why I wanted to end it there.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I love that. I'm right now in this place where I'm at two ends of like the heroic media sort of spectrum. Because on the one hand, I'm doing my first reread of The Lord of the Rings since 2001.
Oh wow! Yeah.
It's been a little bit.
I should reread it.
And I think I read them all before the first film came out, and then I've reread The Hobbit since then, but not Lord of the Rings, and I just started itching to reread it the other day, and was like, oh well, I've got my beat up old omnibus copy on the shelf. I'll just pull that down and see what all that's about. And then on the other hand, I just, having finished Songfiel and Partisan, I am listening to Friends at the Table, Seasons of Hieron.
I love Seasons of Hieron.
I am not very far in yet. We just got past the holiday special, flash forward in time, and I think I just left off with Boat Party having a confrontation in the hotel.
Boat party.
But yeah, it two very good things that are just miles apart. Sorry, kilometers apart.
I still say miles mostly in fantasy, because if I say kilometers, people will get very broken out.
It's
Or, like,
the
leagues
Tiffany
is always-
problem.
Hector's, it is the Tiffany problem. I love both those media properties, and, like, yeah, they're very much, like, not opposite ends of the scale exactly, but, like, Seasons of Heron, I've only listened to the first season of Heron, but it's my absolute content, and I need to finish listening to Twilight Mirage so I can go back and listen to the other seasons of Heron and Marielda, because obviously fantasy is my content, right? Like, I love sci-fi, but, like, fantasy is just like, Probably shouldn't punch my mic when I slap my chest like that for emphasis.
I mean, I've just been clipping over here all day, so, like, it'll be fine.
It's fine, don't even worry about it. But, like,
we're professional podcasters here. Trust us.
We are professional. Trust us. We know what we're doing. You're in safe hands and listening to safe voices here at Tales from the Trunk.
Absolutely.
But, like, with the world-building episode of the first seasons of Heron, where they go, like, into, like, how they're engaging with those tropes and why and what they're doing and stuff, it's just, it's really fun. I love both, like, that kind of stuff and then also, like, the classic stuff, and I love all of it. I love sword and sorcery nonsense. I just love it. I just love it so much.
Fantasy is just so good. It's just so good. There's so much good stuff there.
Yeah. It's like, I love all of the extremely varied and wonderful types of fantasy settings we're getting to see now, but I also shamelessly love, my D&D nonsense, like, my classic, I guess. Like, I don't want all fantasy to be the kind of tired medieval European fantasy, but, like, I like some of it to be because I like to eat it and devour it and consume it, and it sustains me.
Yeah, it's gummy bears. It's a familiar flavor. You can just, like, finish a whole bag without paying attention.
Exactly. Sometimes you just want to go back to what you grew up on.
Yeah. Which, is definitely what was happening for me with Lord of the Rings. I was just like, oh yeah, it's been 20 years since it's been more than 20 years since I've read that. That seems illegal.
Yeah, you have to read it. You actually have to read it once every 10 years, or they revoke your speculative fiction fan license, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to have to report you to the speculative fiction fan licensing committee.
I hope that the number of times my dad has read Lord of the Rings can somehow make it up.
Oh, yeah, no, it's judged by family unit. You're
okay,
fine.
Okay, good. Yeah, he's got published essays and, all that good stuff, so...
Oh, nice. Proper Tolkien nerd.
His pickup line was, back in the day, was, have you read Lord of the Rings? Which is incredible. And then one time, he met a woman who he fancied, and she beat him to it.
Aww! That's love. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But, he, was in his late teens when the first book came out, so, he's really got a right to it.
Yeah, absolutely. First generation.
Yeah. But we're the first generation who gets to read Rem Wigmore.
Oh, I guess so.
So instead of just, shooting the shit about nothing for the next... Which, I would be happy to just shoot the shit about nothing for the entirety of the show. Heavens knows I've done it before. See, for example, the episode that will have... In this present timeline comes out in 4 days from you. Well, I guess 5 days from you, because it will be the 16th when it... But time is fake. Whatever. The episode that comes out the Friday of the week that we're recording this with Miri Baker is just, absolute goblin nonsense for an hour and change and,
Good.
All that stuff. But I want to talk a little bit more about Considine's Counsel and the fact that you set up an only one bed and then there was a second bed and it was just the floor. How dare you?
Solve the equation.
Can you tell a little bit of the story behind sort of where this book came from and how it ended up just getting hucked into the trunk?
Absolute rip, yes. I say book, but like it's a novella, but like that's a book.
Yeah, that's a book.
There's a lot. I have my careful little notes here. Like the things that like outright inspired it were I watched the first season of The Witcher, and like a lot of people bounced off the non-linear storytelling in that, but I thought it was delicious and I loved it, and I kind of wanted to do something like that. So then I did something like that, and a lot of people bounced off of it and did not like it.
Isn't that just the way, though?
I guess mission success, and it's also like inspired by. There was an image actually of like a reconstruction of like a Paleolithic era, like very early European, which was like just looked like a really interesting character to me. Just like because in those very early days, this person had like brown skin and hair and like blue eyes, and I was like, that's. I'm going to make those into fae folk. I just have to. Those are fae folk now. And also a lot of digging into, not literally digging into, metaphorically digging into Newgrange, which is the beautiful passage tomb in Ireland. And I love passage tombs. And I love that whole like era of making big stone stuff that people got like confused about. Like, what could it possibly mean? And mostly it means like calendars and astronomy, and it's neat. I think it's neat. And the other thing that kind of like went into it is I wrote this in I think early 2020, and it's when I was like kind of setting out on a study of novellas, if that makes sense. Like I just read or was reading the Hugo voter packet that year, because that was like the one year I let myself go to the Hugos as a treat, right? No, not the Hugos, Worldcon. Yes, I was reading the Hugo voter packet.
Yep.
Because I let myself go to Worldcon as a treat because it was going to be in New Zealand, and then I guess technically it was. Nothing notable happened in 2020. So I read a bunch of these novellas, and it was like I'd read a few before and I liked them a lot, but I just got obsessed with the art form of it, right? I just got obsessed with that medium, and I am just suddenly realizing I don't need to plug in my laptop. It's fine. That's not related to novellas. So I read a bunch of those and I wanted to write them, and also this was actually meant to be a novelette. It was a novelette. It was 13,000 something words, and then I sent it to my first proofreader, and he was like, yeah, I mean, I love it, but like longer though, make it longer. And my other proofreader was like, not my thing, and I was like, that's fine, and it is fine, and it happens. So I made it longer, and now that's in its current form. I just like put more scenes in it, right? Like that scene that I read was it's the fourth scene in the current version. It was, I think, the second or third scene in my novelette draft version of it, and it will probably be the first scene if I follow my next beta reader's advice on the pacing, right? Like, if I try to make it just linear, who knows? Anyway, then another beta reader read it and was like, absolutely, but needs to be longer, and I was like, I'm not doing that again. I don't feel like it, because I feel like all the interesting stuff is in there already, and I don't want to just write transitional scenes, because I don't care. And also because that wasn't the shape of it in my head, right? But that's another of the things I could do. So it just, it was meant to be an exercise in trying to write a novelette, which did not work, although later I did manage to kind of nail down how to write those. And so then it became a novella, but like then, depending on feedback, I could make it a novel, but I don't want to make it a novel. So that's the history of that. Did you want me to talk about the trunking of it?
I would. I just want to make a note here that it could be worse in terms of you should make it longer. The book that I haven't finished yet, that I won NaNoWriMo 2021 with, started out as this would have been like late January, early February of 2020, doing a flash fiction competition, Codex style, but not in Codex, with a bunch of my friends from Slack, and I wrote this beautiful, evocative little flash piece that I like adored, and everybody who read it adored, and everybody who read it was like, Hillary, this is a novel.
Yeah.
What you wrote was part of a novel, and I'm like,
yeah.
Harumph.
Absolute mood. Yes. I took a long time to, like, figure out how to write short fiction that wasn't just a piece of a novel, because I started off in novels, and, like, sometimes I still do that. I trip over when a novel comes out. I can't help myself.
It just...
Mood.
What I'm, like, one, I need to finish that novel. Two, like, when World Fantasy Award winner C.L. Polk says, what you have here is a novel, you write the novel, like...
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So, you wrote this, you made it longer, and then just toss it over your shoulder into the trunk.
I did.
Just bin it.
Just like that. And with no intervening process. No. I threw it at one of Neon Hemlock's submission windows because obviously I love them, and Dream Press and maybe one day. Not a fit for them, which is not especially surprising, but then I wasn't sure what else to do with it, right? Like, so I actually only ended up racking up 3 rejections on this, which is a tiny amount of rejections, right? Like, I have some short stories out in the mill right now, like, that I've racked up, like, 11, and I'm not, like, done with them yet, although I should, like, you know, I'm down to the next tier of markets to try them on, so I need to, like, kind of research more of those, but I haven't had time to do much short story stuff when I've been editing.
Who has time to do short story stuff?
Nobody. People are like, it's shorter, and I'm like, no, it's not. It takes longer to write a short story than a novel. I'm filling space while I find where I wrote down my notes about why I trunked it. Where is it?
Yeah, I think
well, it doesn't matter. I remember. I wrote it and stuff. And then, like, because in my head it was kind of still, like, a novelette, so, like, the few, like, fantasy and sci-fi, like, magazines and stuff that do, like, up to that length of stuff is where I threw it at, and they were like, which is fine. But then I was just like, what do I do with this now? And, like, I could have submitted to a few more places. Like, there's still technically a couple of places that I could try it at. Or, like, it's a decent length. I could, like, self-pub it. Or, like, I could self-pub it under, like, a new pen name since it's kind of a romance. I mean, it is a romance, but it's got other stuff in it. I could make it more of a romance and it would probably do better. But, like, I just don't have enough confidence in the story, I guess. And it's just... It just doesn't feel like it's working. It just doesn't quite...
I mean, that's a mood as well. That's such a mood. Like,
yeah.
Sometimes you just realize, like, okay, I like it, and it's just not really doing the thing quite.
Yeah, it kind of just feels like an experiment that didn't completely work out, you know? Like, or, like, that taught me a lot, but, like, didn't result in a thing of itself. Like, because I still haven't decided what doesn't work about it. Like, is it too long? Is it too short? Does it need to be longer? Does it need to be shorter? Does the non-linear stuff not work at all? Or do I just need to smooth it out? It's just it's a clumsy child. It isn't quite anything. So it's sitting in the trunk for now until I have some length of time in which to edit it, or, like, some idea of how I'd want to do so, which is the main thing that's lacking at the moment.
Yeah, or sometimes it's just a matter of, like, putting it in front of somebody who has just the right insight to either, like... I've had the situation where, like, I put it in front of somebody, they say something super insightful about it, and I do not use any of that, but it still fixes it for me in my head.
Something. Absolutely, yeah. I could throw it a few more people, probably, but it's... Oh, I just don't have the heart, I guess. I'm a very sensitive creature, so, like, if a story doesn't work, I'm like... Like, I know logically this isn't a statement on, like, me or my skill or my worth as a person, but also have you considered that it is a little?
Yeah.
So it's sitting for a bit. But maybe I'll throw it at other people someday. But, like, I still like a lot about it, so I was happy to have a chance to
and
weed it out a bit.
Every time you try, like, especially, you know, you were saying, like, oh, I'm doing, like, a novelette study here, like...
Yeah.
Unlocking those, like... Unlocking any length form is hard, but, like, those middle ones are real hard.
Yeah, they're really tricky, right? Like, the non-linear stuff, like, works so well in stuff like I think Ashante Wilson's novellas are just like there's one of them that does that so good. I think they both do that so good, the ones that I've read, but like I am not Ashante Wilson.
Yeah.
But it's a fun form. I love it.
Yeah. I just, like, thinking about, like, playing around with time and stuff just made me remember, I want to say it was, Charlie, C.C. Finlay, had a story years ago now. I don't remember, like, if it was... It might have been, like, after his second guest gig at F&SF, but before he took over at F&SF. But had this story called Time Bomb Time that was... you know, I'll it'll be linked in the show notes in, 2 months' time, but... or a month's time, whatever. Time is fake, who knows? But he pulled off this trick of, like, halfway through the story, the words just go in reverse order.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's,
Full
it's like
palindrome,
a 1,000-ish, 1,500 word story, something like that. So, like, I think easier in some ways, but, like,
I don't know. That's taking a Villanelle and making it real big. That's a lot of words to do something like that.
A lot. But like, it's that sort of thing where, like, you don't get to do that in the big stuff. Or, like, if you do, you really have to work at it.
Yeah.
But, like, I love novellas and novelettes and like, I really appreciate that there are markets who actually care about them now. Like,
yes.
For instance, Neon Hemlock.
Yes, our friends at Neon Hemlock.
And...
Go buy all their books.
Yes, go buy all their books, please. Please go buy all their books. Go buy this year's... What did Premee just win? A Nebula?
Premee Mohamed just won a Nebula for her novella, and What Can We Offer You Tonight? Go buy that. It's got
go
a
buy
beautiful
that.
embossed cover with a fish on it.
Go.
I was about to go hold my copy up for the camera. That's useless. This is an audio medium.
Yeah, I think my copy is in the other room, or I would also hold it up to the camera. Go buy it. Go listen to her book tour about that book from last August, I think. Fantastic, incredible book.
I think I did. I think I did, because I remember hearing it being read out.
Go listen to it again.
Anyway,
rack up more numbers for that episode. It's all good. But and just, of course, Tor.com, like, really throwing the weight of Macmillan Publishing Group behind putting out novellas as, like, a serious business thing. Like, it's just great. It's just great.
They started this big wave.
You don't get stuff like I am sure there are publishers right now who are putting out, like, pulp Western novels, probably.
I wish they would. I have a pulp Western novel.
It would be great if they would, but, like, Tor put out 3 Sarah Gailey novellas, like River of Teeth and Taste of Marrow, and then Upright Women Wanted, which are, like, just impeccable. And, like, you don't get that sort of daring, I'll say, outside of the novella space a lot.
That kind of, like, genre exploration, I guess. That kind of being open to trying something new. Yeah, River of Teeth is one of the things I, like, studied as part of my novella study, along with, like, the Tensorite novellas and Emily Tesh's duology and all that.
Oh, yeah.
I love novellas.
And,
I just love them so
and
much.
Murderbot.
Murderbot, yes. Murderbot came out... I mean, Murderbot was out then, but I didn't start reading Murderbot until after the beginning of my very serious novella study, which involved reading novellas and going, What else was I going to say about novellas or novelettes or stories or... I don't remember.
The thing that keeps on coming up to me is like, oh no, I've forgotten my high school English teacher's name. Teacher Wendy. Teacher Wendy, if you're somehow out there listening to this, like, feel vindicated in the fact that I did actually pick something up about, like, picking apart and analyzing literature from your classes, even though I never turned a single paper in on time.
Yeah.
Please know that you were teaching me really important skills that I didn't realize were really important until like 15 years later.
Yeah. Shout out to my English teachers. Love y'all. I write very intuitively, so like making like a conscious study of something and like actually like learning about all the pieces of story structure that like I often employ instinctively but like don't think about on a conscious level is like very useful and quite necessary for like those forms that I kind of that don't come as easy as breathing, right? Because I haven't been like submerged in my whole life the way I have with like novels and like to a lesser extent short stories. So like you kind of have to for those ones, especially because things like novellas, there's still a lot of different things you can do with them. I was having this great chat with, a fair amount of writer friends the other day about like there's like a lot of different approaches you can take to a novella, but like it whether you come at it as like mainly a short fiction writer writing a long short story, or whether you come at it as like mainly a novelist writing a short novel, hugely affects what kind of story you write, and you can do both of those things and they both work. It's interesting. I think they're interesting. I think they're neat.
It's so cool.
I remembered what I was going to say, which is that my brain has not been able to read well for like at least the last 2 or 3 years, a bit longer than that really. Like my brain just, my eyes skip over the paragraphs, I really read things a lot, I struggle with focusing. I've actually found a bit of limited success by just like holding the book up and like covering everything except a couple of paragraphs so that if my eyes skip ahead, at least I don't go like 2 pages ahead, which is helpful. But like this obviously interferes with reading time and means I don't get through as many books as I would, love to, and also have to because it is my job. Not like a paying job much, but like a very, it is
it is a job.
It's my life's work. It's so novellas are fantastic because I can read those. People are like, you can read a novella in a sitting, and I'm like, I can read a novella in a weekend or a week or a couple of weeks depending on how my brain is going. I can read a novella, and that is great, and that is so important to have, and I think they're very important, and I like them.
You get to finish things.
I get to finish things and feel like I've read a book, which is an important thing to be able to feel for me.
That, like, I'm probably going to read at least one book, start to finish, before I finish actually reading Lord of the Rings, because my brain does not allow me to read quickly, but it does allow me to read multiple things at once, which is, a pretty neat trick. Pretty nice.
My brain never used to let me do that, but I think like the current, I guess like alongside the not being able to focus as much in my current reading habits, I have been reading like hopping back and forth between books a lot more than I ever used to. I guess because you kind of have to if you're not reading a book in 2 days like you used to, eh? It happens. But like I'm able to do that now. So like at the moment I just finished reading, I'm just going to talk about books a bit. I just finished reading The Black Tongue Thief, which I liked quite a lot. Because I love fantasy, and it's great, and there's war corvids, and I love war corvids. And I am in the middle of reading, like, a book or two from, like, friends that I'm beta reading, which are very good, and which I'm very excited about. And I also am rereading K.J. Charles's Will Darling Adventures trilogy as a treat, because I love them so much. And I'm also, I'm partway through reading Kurangai Tuku by Fiti Hideaka, which just won the Occam Book Awards here.
Oh,
and it's
very cool.
Good. So that's like the print book that I'm reading, and then I've got like these 4 ebooks that I'm also reading at like the same time, and it's kind of working, I guess. And I would never have expected that to be something I was able to do. I used to just start a book and finish it, the same way I write books.
Yeah.
But like now I guess kind of have them all sprawled around me, and
yeah, I've got my Lord of the Rings
Like
is
a
in the
charcuterie
bedroom.
plate.
It's the bedtime reading, and then in the living room, I've got a stack of graphic novels. I just started. I've got the like full collected Eat the Rich by Sarah Gailey, and
Oh, nice.
right below that is Maggie Takuta Hall's Squad, and right below that is I cannot remember the title of it. The new Molly Knox Ostertag book that came
nice.
out sometime in the last year-ish. Time is Fake. Who knows? It's not Witch Boy, but I'm
Molly Knox Ostertag, they have like a collaboration with Ben and Lee Mulligan, right? It might be that one.
It might be that one. I don't remember.
Right.
And then I'm watching Escape from the Bloodkeep from Dimension 20 because my wife was like, "You're reading Lord of the Rings right now. You have to watch Bloodkeep as well. It's vital."
Oh, yeah,
and I'm like,
absolutely.
"Yeah, okay,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I loved Bloodkeep, and, like, it's necessary like, I think anyone would enjoy it, especially if you're familiar with, like, tropes of fantasy, but, like, definitely, like, the more Tolkien geek you are, I think the more you'll go, like, oh, haha, I see what you're doing there. Because, like, I definitely benefited from, like, having my partner there, like, as we all, like, we watched it as, like, a friend group, and she was able to be like, oh, see, this is... And I was like, ooh. So that was helpful. Like, annotations.
very good, very good."
Yeah. Finally, Mulligan's, like, it's fine to just talk about whatever on a podcast. This podcast isn't about anything in particular. It's the podcast where Remedy and Hillary get together and chat about podcasts and D&D. It's fine.
Absolutely.
I love Finlay Mulligan's, like, elf voice where he's just like, ah, yes, the withering of ages is held within this single leaf. It's amazing.
It's so good.
Goals.
I do most of my actual play consumption just via podcast instead of watching it, but, like,
Yeah.
I really appreciate seeing everybody's, like, facial expressions around the table, and especially, like, I don't know, I have tried a couple of times to get into, not Dimension 20, what's the other? Critical Role.
Probably Critical Role.
I've tried a couple of times and have just, like, not been able to, just because it's like, it's so, there's so much of it, it's so much,
Yeah.
but, like, Matt Mercer's facial expressions in Bloodkeep murder me.
Matt Mercer's character in Bloodkeep is my favourite thing Matt Mercer has ever done.
It's
like
impeccable.
a lot about Critical Role, but bounced off the pacing as well. But friggin' Leland, oh my god.
Yeah. So good. And I also, like, Iffy is just wonderful.
Oh, Effie. Yeah. It's an embarrassing thing about watching most Dimension 20 shows and then also a lot of Exandria Unlimited shows is that I just sit there going, wow, like hard eyes at pretty much every player and person at that table always, because they're all so hot and cool and know so many things about storytelling. It's embarrassing. They're all so cute.
Yeah.
Erika Rishi.
Yeah. Definitely me and my friend just, like, having, she's like at, like, episode 35 of Partisan right now, and is just, like, sliding into my DMs and screaming at me occasionally.
I need to listen to Partisan. I've heard good things about the goat? The train goat?
Oh, no, that's Songfiel.
Oh, is that
You should
Songfiel?
listen to
Okay. I've heard
Songfiel as
good
well.
things. I should listen to all of them. And
Yeah.
I will eventually.
But
energy.
yeah,
attention.
you'll get probably more out of Partisan than I have because you're listening to Twilight Mirage.
Ooh.
Because it's all part of the same divine cycle.
Okay. Nice. It's wild that I started with Twilight Mirage and not Counterweight. Anyway.
And then their next season is going to be a direct sequel to Partisan as well. So,
Ooh. Oh yeah, better get in on that.
yeah, I'm like glad that I caught up to Partisan so that I can then get in on the ground floor of Palisades and like.
Ooh, that's a good sequel name.
Yeah.
Damn, they're so good at names.
They're
I
so
stole
good
so
at
much.
names.
I didn't
They're
steal.
so good
like,
at...
I took inspiration to be on my naming bullshit from them always being on their naming bullshit, right? That's how I have characters in Wolfpack with names like The Seas Will Rise and Drown the Unworthy.
Which is so good.
Thank you.
There's a game that they played during Road to Palisades that I haven't listened to it, and I'm not going to remember the name of the game. It was like a 2-player, diceless, GM-less game that's like the tale of 2 mech pilot rivals. I want to say it's Last Shooting. I will absolutely have links to it in the show notes. It was incredible. Like, again, I haven't heard the Road to episode where they actually play it, but my wife and I played it, and I was just like, okay, I'm going to be on my friends at the table naming bullshit, and
always.
Like, it made me want to sit down and write, like, some cyberpunk just so that I could give people these incredible names. Like, I don't even remember my character's name now, but it was like, you know, definitely one of those, like, a noun and a verb or something.
Yep. I'm gonna to make this technically part of my Wolfpack promo, which it kind of is-ish, which is why I'm spending all of it talking about podcasts and D&D. Some of my favourite character names in Wolfpack. The aforementioned The Seas Will Rise and Drown the Unworthy. Also another character from that same cult, Sinners and Polluters Shall Burn Like the Coals.
Fantastic.
Yes. And then we have Frankie Taxon.
Good.
Their ancestor Bug-Eye Taxon. And Celia Mendel.
We love to hear it.
And then we also have some more minor characters called Strong Arm and Holdfast.
Good.
Together form Stronghold Security. I'm on my bullshit at all times. I need to plug in my laptop.
Good.
I'm back.
We love to be on our bullshit.
Always. Just do it. Just have fun.
Yeah.
Be yourself.
So I just on the subject of being on our bullshit and perpetually being on this show's bullshit, I just heard this weird sound, and a blue police box just showed up in the podcasting studio. I'm wondering if we can take a step into this time machine and go back. If there are any words of wisdom that you wish you could offer to young writer Rem Wigmore, and by extension to any early career writers who may be listening to this.
Do you? That's what my flatmates say when we're watching Doctor Who. It's
I mean, in the show notes, you just wrote nah and then a key smash, so.
Yeah, I was very tempted to just be like, nah. But okay, actual advice. It's crazy because I still kind of feel like I'm like an early career writer in terms of like, stuff. But like looking at my publications and also looking at my first novel came out in 2013.
That's it's been a grip.
It's 9 years. It's 9 years. I started writing when I was 16. I think it's complicated, right? Because I'm, to get real, kind of like in that part of my career and also my life and my mental health where I'm trying to figure out how to balance this life and this career and this driving passion that I have, right? Like this is not the point of my life, but it is my goal.
It's a guiding star.
It is my guiding star. Thank you. It's my guiding star. So like balancing that with having a life and like not burning out. I had like a pretty bad period of burnout last year, and I'm still kind of trying to fight it off. And actually, yeah, there it is. Have weekends. Take weekends. If you're on that grind and you have like maybe your day job, for a little bit I had like my day job, and that was part-time, so that was like 3 days a week, but like 9 or 10 hours on my feet. Oof. Back home 11 midnight. So then I'd rest for like a day or two and then like try and write on the other days. But like if you've got like your work and you're like trying to write every day a little bit in the morning or whatever, you need to have like at least one day where you don't, right? Like it's so hard. And I know it's like it's a little bit different if like you're doing that work hustle and like your writing is how you get out of it. Like I get that. and, like, that escape is important. Definitely if you're at a point where, like, you've got, like, a writing career going on, or, like, you're stressed out by it, or, like, you're doing not just the writing, but also the other aspects of the job, which is, you know, all of the admin and the emails and the promo, even the fun and good promo, and, like, the stressing out about stuff, which is not, it shouldn't have to be.
Right.
It's hard to not have that, right? It's hard not to do that. Have a day off. I always had Wednesday off because that's when I hang out with some buddies, and I would always have one of the weekend days off depending on when my D&D game was. D&D was vital. So, like, the other piece of advice is having a storytelling or creative medium that isn't connected to your career or, like, anything like that, right? Just for fun, something that you do with your friends, because otherwise your creativity will drip out of your hands however much you try to hold on to it. You need to have something that's, like, for fun, where you can indulge in storytelling without having to worry about how it connects to the market and to building your name and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, maybe you're not as worried about, like, building your name and, like, achieving great things as, like, I am specifically, but I think a fair amount of people are, at least a little bit, right? Like,
Yeah.
to stick around in this for any length of time, you kind of need to have either an impressive level of unconcern or a certain amount of egotism, just enough to balance out your equal amount of lack of self-worth.
Oh,
It's normal and healthy and fine. Have weekends. I now take both Saturday and Sunday off, which feels like a wild indulgence.
Insane
But
luxury.
you know the thing is, in combination with some other stuff I've been doing for my health, that means that instead of taking, like, 3 hours to be able to get up the focus to do half an hour of work, I've been able to just do 3 or 4 or even 5 hours of work while I was in the middle of my edits.
Sorcery.
And now just, like... and now, like, 2 or 3, like, you know, in a day. I don't have, like, a day job anymore. I'm unemployed.
Woo!
So I have that time, so that's good. So I get that not everyone can have, like, weekends like that. Have a day where you don't have to write. It's so exhausting to have to come home and it's, like, 6 p.m. and then you have to cook, and, like, you probably have to look after your kids or your pets or, like, attend to your life. There's laundry, there's dishes. Sometimes you have the energy after that to, like, sit down and write your heart work. Sometimes you don't, and you need to have to let that be okay, or you will burn out so badly on everything that you do.
Yeah.
Have weekends.
Yeah.
But, like, because I take the indulgence of that extra time off, it means I have enough focus and energy to actually do the work I need to be doing.
It's so important to take time off and take time to recharge and take time to, like, you know, whether, like you said, it's another, you know, recreational storytelling or,
Yeah.
you know, like, play music or, you know, do a martial art or something that engages, that can engage maybe the same parts of your brain in a different way, or that engages different parts of your brain in a way that, like, frees up the part of your brain that does that work to recharge and then do more of that work.
Yeah, you need to have something in your life that isn't writing, because there is so much uncertainty in this life, and there is so much... I mean, rejection is built into the game, right? And, like, you have to just be able to weather it, but, like, sometimes it does hurt, and that's okay. You can let yourself feel that hurt, but, like, to be able to weather those storms, you need to have a backup harbor, all right?
Have a backup, and do not ever feel bad about taking time to rest. Please.
Yes, I am outright. I mean, I feel bad for taking time to rest all the time, constantly, anytime I don't, like, meet my own entirely self-imposed goals and deadlines. But I am, to the extent that this, I guess, mid-career author has any sway in your mind, take time to rest. It is important. You need to, and you deserve it. And also, your work will be better as well. So, like...
Hillary and Rem, your podcasting entities, demand that you rest.
Yes.
And also give you permission. Your permission slip is on the iTunes review page. If you leave us 5 stars. And also over on Goodreads, where you can probably 5-star Wolfpack right now. Certainly 5-star Foxhunt.
Oh yeah, don't 5-star Wolfpack yet, but you can mark it as to read, and you can definitely 5-star Foxhunt, and I can't see it because I've blocked off my Goodreads page for my mental health, but it would still help me a great deal if you could post happy reviews. Not happy reviews, you know what I mean.
Good reviews.
If you like the book,
Helpful.
if you say somewhere... helpful. If you say somewhere that you like the book, that is very helpful to me.
Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit about Wolfpack?
Absolutely, I can talk to you a little bit about Wolfpack. What do you want to know about Wolfpack? So Wolfpack is the sequel to Foxhunt, and it is... Foxhunt is my novel that came out with Queen of Swords Press in 2021.
We love
it. It is a... yes, and I appeared here on Tales from the Trunk and read a bit of it. It is solarpunk. It's bounty hunters. There's furries in it. Like, they just are.
It's real good. It's real good.
If you wear animal masks and hunt down energy criminals while calling yourself the wolf, you are a furry. I don't make the rules, except I do, because it's my book and it's great. The sequel, Wolfpack, is forthcoming in December. It's not up for pre-order yet, but you can keep your eye out. You can mark it as to read on Goodreads. You can build up Foxhunt to your friends if you like. Spread the word. Did you just want me to talk about when it's coming out and stuff, or do you want me to talk about the general plot?
Let's take a little pitch on it.
All right,
let's get folks pumped up.
Totally, I have my proper pitch somewhere, which has all sorts of very cool sentences, and you'll just have to take my word on that, and you'll get to see some version of that pitch when the blurb is out. But it is a sequel to Foxhunt. Spoilers for Foxhunt. Okay. Orpheus and... I'm trying to figure out the most non-spoilery way of saying it. To make things up to her lover, Orpheus goes on a gene bank heist.
Woo!
To get the genetic data of wolves and reintroduce wolves into the wild. So it's about conservation, it's about rewilding, it's about yearning, it's about stupid decisions that have narrative consequences. It's about gay stuff, trans stuff, guitars, motorbikes, wolves, bugs, all sorts of shit.
If you don't like at least 3 things in that list, then, we don't know how to help you, but,
Gene, bank, heist.
Fantastic. And obviously we can't put up a pre-order link for that right now, but, watch this Twitter, watch Rem's Twitter, watch my own personal Twitter. We'll shout about it. We'll do it. You'll know.
The other good thing in Wolfpack, there's a lot of good things in Wolfpack. The other thing I should shout out in Wolfpack is the main character, who is a runaway from a cult, and he finds a broken piece of an AI and thinks it is an angel.
We love to hear about it.
Yeah.
We love it. So before you go, has there been anything that you've been reading, watching, listening to, playing, anything at all like that is media that you are pumped up to tell other people about?
Fuck, I did that already.
Rem, it's been an absolute delight having you back on the show. I'm sure this will be not the last time that listeners of Tales from the Trunk will be hearing from you on this very RSS feed. But before we get going, where can our listeners find you elsewhere on the interweb?
Well, you can find me on Twitter as @FayWriter, or you can look at my website at remwigmore.com.
We recommend doing both things. Rem, it's been so fantastic to have you on the show. Just absolutely incredible. We love it. Thank you so much for coming back on.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, I'll be back again here next year, because you have to have me on once yearly, or you lose your Fan of Rem Wigmore license, unfortunately.
It's true. And also, I've now made sure to have at least one Oceania guest a year for the last couple of years now, so it's legally I'm required to.
Yeah, you have to meet your quota.
Yeah. Listeners, stick around next month when I won't have any guests from Oceania, shockingly, I know, but when our guests will be Neon Yang and...
Whoa!
Yeah, I know, right?
Damn!
Yeah. And Amy Kaczynski, who is also just by my opinion, an amazing get, and I just happen to have, been in a writing group with her for 7 years now, something like. But yeah, listeners, stick around for both of those things.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Tales from the Trunk is mixed and produced in beautiful Oakland, California. Our theme music is Paper Wings by Lillian Boyd. You can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/trunkcast. All patrons of the show now get a sticker and logo button, along with show outtakes and other content that can't be found anywhere else. You can find the show on Twitter at Trunkcast, and I tweet at HBBisnieks. If you like the show, consider taking a moment to rate and review us on your preferred podcast platform. And remember, don't self-reject.